Viewers, can you imagine a country that claims to guarantee equality before the law, but where one set of citizens submits to the constitution and another set is allowed to circumvent its articles? Can you imagine a country that claims to guarantee equality, but allows one set of citizens the right to marry 4 times, for instance, but jails another set of citizens for doing exactly the same? Can you imagine a country that claims to guarantee equality before the law, but allows women from one denomination to marry when they're barely pubescent, but sends another set of women to correctional facilities if they dare to do such a thing? Wouldn't you say that such a country is paying lip service to the idea of equality and indeed even fraternity, and at a push, even liberty, viewers? Well, let me tell you that you, viewers, are living in such a country. That country is our very own Bharat. Our constitution has long championed the ideal of one law for one India or a uniform civil code, but unfortunately, 76 years after independence, we are still struggling to be a state where in the matters of gender, parity, inheritance, marriage and succession, we treat all equally under the law. Thankfully, viewers, one state has taken a boldish step in that direction by adopting the UCC, or the Uniform Civil Code. That state is Uttarakhand. You've probably all heard about it. You've heard some debates also about it. You've read articles about it, where it has become the first in the history of independent India to adopt such a code. The only other state where this exists is Goa, but that was a legal framework bequeathed by the Portuguese. Now viewers, here's how Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code hopes to unite citizens around a common law. Let's look at the first head, marriage. Now viewers, in Uttarakhand, only males that have completed 21 years and females 18 years will be allowed to marry. This wasn't the case earlier, as I began by telling you, viewers. There were differentials. Viewers, neither party will have the right to have more than one spouse. There can't be any bigamy or polygamy or anything else. Same-sex marriage is not allowed, which is of course something that the Supreme Court has not acceded to. Polygamy has been criminalized. Wife can seek divorce on the grounds of polygamy. Property rights, on this very important metric, viewers, equal rights to both sons and daughters, regardless of category. This cuts across, viewers, all religions, all faiths, creeds, denominations, etc. On the issue of inheritance, especially to ensure that there is parity, there will be equal rights to spouse, children and parents. All matters of distinctions have been removed. Live-in relationship partners will have to, however, submit statements to a registrar. The statement will be sent to a local police station. Parents to be informed if a partner is under 21 years. Viewers, many people say that this is an intrusion in private affairs between consensual couples. There's a debate raging around that. We'll discuss that. But even as the Uttarakhand government enacted the law, the Congress and other opposition parties have pitched a protest. The Congress party, Member of Parliament Karti Chidambaram, has even begun weaving a communal motive into the law, saying that Uttarakhand is fast becoming the test lab, the test laboratory for Hindutva Iran. Yes, viewers, he is warning Muslims in Uttarakhand and others in Rajasthan and Assam that plan to adopt the Uttarakhand model of the UCC. You will be next. You will be living in a Hindutva kind of Iran. Viewers, of course, this has been said about India that it is becoming a Hindutva or Hindu Pakistan, where only one set of people are exalted. But viewers, as I have just shown you, that in Uttarakhand on various metrics, marriage, inheritance, succession, etc., the law is going to be the same. No one is going to get priority. Some exemptions have been made in the case of tribals, but that's a completely different story, viewers. Between the main religions, there's going to be no distinction. Viewers, there are others in the opposition that have torn into the BJP. The Saffron Party is also hit back. First, listen in to what the other politicians are saying from the opposition.
एक ही नाक एक औरत मर्द सबको एक ही बराबर कर दे तो ऊपर वाले ने चाहता तो वैसे ही बना देता। दुनिया में मर्द बनाते नहीं थे, सारी औरतें बन जाती, या औरत नहीं बनाता तो सारे मर्द बन जाते। नेचर के खिलाफ है, कोई भी जो करेगा कोई ज्यादा दिन चलने वाला नहीं है।
भारतीय जनता पार्टी अजीबोगरीब काम करती है। भारत जैसे विभिन्नताओं भरे देश में यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड संभव नहीं है।
Can you believe it, viewers? Badruddin Ajmal says that what is against nature, what is unnatural, can never endure. Now, viewers, what is natural about marrying 4 women? What is natural about marrying a child? Viewers, one can't understand this. What is natural about discriminating between a girl child and a boy child? Viewers, it is strange. The BJP hit back and says that the Congress and others are fast becoming like the new Muslim League when its ilk make such comments. Now, viewers, if the Uttarakhand government is lurching towards becoming a laboratory for a discriminating and parochial Hindutva by adopting the UCC, then can the naysayers explain why the founding fathers of our union, including Congress heavyweights, and later even the Supreme Court, were advocating for a UCC or a uniform civil code? Were they all wanting to turn India into a Hindutva Iran? Let me walk you through some of these illustrious names that have pushed, viewers, for a uniform civil code. Who are we talking about? Dr. Rajendra Prasad, President of the Constituent Assembly. He supported the idea of a uniform civil code as a means to ensure equal rights for women and promote gender justice. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Chairman of the Drafting Committee of Constitution. He said the UCC is meant to address the inequity inherent in personal laws relating especially to succession, inheritance and marriage. It was because of his efforts, viewers, that it found place, the resolve, to adopt a uniform civil code in the directive principles of state policy. Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister, tall Congress leader, emphasized the need for social reform and modernization, favoring a UCC to personal laws based on religion, highlighted the UCC's potential to foster a unified and progressive nation. Then there was K.M. Munshi, another Congress member of the Constituent Assembly. He felt that while the state must not interfere in religious practice, certain matters should be governed by secular legislation, not religion. Felt it matters like inheritance and succession were accepted under the umbrella of personal religious laws, then women would never be treated equally despite the fundamental right against discrimination. Alari Krishna Swami Iyer, he is a member of the drafting committee of the Constitution. He rejected the notion that the UCC would cause discontent and disharmony. He argued that the aim of the UCC was to achieve unity and amity by removing factors that contributed to differences between communities. 15 women members of the Constituent Assembly said that the UCC first got support from women members of the Constituent Assembly. Maulana Hazrat Mohani, member of the Constituent Assembly, he supported the UCC, emphasizing the importance of gender justice and equal rights for women in Muslim personal laws. Last but not least, viewers, the Supreme Court of India, in Shah Banu verdict order, Supreme Court lamented the fact that Article 44 of the Indian Constitution which envisions a uniform civil code, had remained largely unimplemented. It emphasized that a uniform civil code, or UCC, would foster national integration by removing conflicting ideologies and loyalties to different personal laws. Viewers, how can an article of faith virtually, championed by so many luminaries, including the founding fathers, how can such an article be equated today with some sort of a Hindutva conspiracy to turn India into a fundamentalist Iran? Think about it, viewers. Let's open it up. Let's ask some fundamental questions of those who are raising doubts and fears and trying to incite and stoke members of the minority community. I want to, viewers, begin this by going straight across to Lokesh Jindal of the Congress, Muhammad Asif Suhail, who's a political analyst. RP Singh is there with us, gender parity activist. Zakia Soman is also there with us. We're also going to be joined by Mr. Bhandari, Ishkaran Bhandari, who's a lawyer who can walk us through why the UCC doesn't discriminate against different sections of the public or reduce India into a laboratory, Hindutva Iran, and whatnot. Lokesh Jindal, let me begin with you first. You're an articulate spokesperson of the Congress party, you're a defender, you're a lawyer, I'm told. So I want to begin by asking you, Mr. Jindal, do you think when Karti Chidambaram says that the attempt is being made to turn one state of the Indian Union and soon others into a Hindutva Iran stands the test of reason, when some of the greatest luminaries, the founding fathers of our constitution, and also, of course, of the Congress party, have advocated for a UCC? Were they all part of some RSS conspiracy?
The vision of the founding fathers was to gradually realize UCC, not necessarily by law, but also by social reforms and cultural transformation. Now, today we will discuss the Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code in depth. Look at the provisions of UCC in the Uttarakhand. It makes registration of marriage compulsory and the register is open for inspection. Now, that means that you have given a complete power to the registrar and the police to carry out surveillance. If there are certain people belonging to the fundamentalist ideologies, don't you think they are intruding into the privacy of individuals? They can always carry out moral policing, enter houses of interfaith couples, intercaste couples, khap panchayats. Now they will have a complete register with themselves to find out people who have indulged into intercaste marriage or interfaith marriage, and these could be targeted. This sets a dangerous precedent. It is with this context that Karti Chidambaram said that this bill is aiming at closing all forms of institutional framework for social intercourse. The idea is the Uniform Civil Code and its provisions. Yes, we do agree that there are certain provisions which are progressive in nature, but then there are loopholes in this UCC that is presented by the Uttarakhand, and there is an intent of political mischief that can be exploited by the ruling regime. That is what we oppose. Yes, sir.
Okay, that is what you oppose, the registration of marriage, which is compulsory. Well, do you know, sir, that under the Special Marriages Act, that is also a requirement?
Yes, but that's a choice. Over here, if a person fails
that's
to
not a
register
choice,
a marriage,
sir. Under
no, it's
Special
criminal
Marriages of Act, no, one second. Under Special Marriages Act, sir, registrars have the right to scrutinize. Your notification of marriage is put up on a board for, as you say, KAP and other panchayats to raise objections.
To have the marriage registered under Hindu Marriage Act or a secular Special Marriage Act. Now, that is the choice of an individual. But over here in Uttarakhand, every individual, irrespective of the religion,
we would all, Lokesh Jindal, we would all be making a mistake. We would all be making a mistake if we were to assume immediately Yes, there are dangers, of course. Yes, there are many dangers. But we will be very remiss to immediately attribute a communal motive to all of this. This would cut across every community.
Well, then Rahul, why is the register
Why
being...
fearmonger with minorities? I can't understand what is the meaning of the word Hindutva Iran. Can you please explain this?
Yes.
I am talking about a particular context. Hindutva Iran, what does this mean?
Fundamentalist states or states deriving legitimacy from religion tend to formulate laws to protect basic institutions of religion.
Sir, I would
To
think,
ensure-
fair enough, I would think that a state that guarantees the primacy of religious laws would actually be guilty of veering towards a theocracy, not the other way around. Would you not agree, Mr. Jindal? Isn't that logical?
But Rahul, there is already a
I can
secular
understand that there are concerns over privacy and all of that being violated. I completely understand that, and that's a debate we can have. But I cannot understand how you can claim that this is a lurch towards becoming a Hindutva Iran or a Hindutva Pakistan where only one religion is prioritized. This is not the case, sir. In fact, to the contrary, till now the Indian state prioritized the religious edicts of one faith predominantly. Even the Hindu personal code was, as you know, Hindu personal laws were codified. Wasn't that
Certainly,
discriminatory? Wasn't that reverse discrimination? Reverse religious discrimination?
Allow me to reply. Rahul, the track record has been that...
No, don't talk about track record, sir. Every law can be abused. Every law can be abused. Even free speech laws in this country can be abused. And I agree with you, Mr. Jindal, that they can be abused. And I'm not sitting here suggesting that they won't be abused. But I'm only asking you, when you make a communal statement like this, surely, sir, there is a mischief that you are aiming at. And that mischief is to plant fear in Muslim minds and other minds. Of course, what does it mean? Hindutva Iran or Hindutva Pakistan?
Rahul, if you see that religion as a component, a person's belief, these are all covered under the fundamental rights, part 3 of the Constitution.
Sir, we were supposed to aspire towards a uniform civil code. The only only personal belief codes that got codified in this country were on the Hindu side. You know this. Was that not discriminatory? Were we a theocracy at that time? An Islamic theocracy that we punished only Hindus?
Tribes are kept immune or outside this UCC. Can you please
Let me open this up. Let me bring in Zakia Suman. Zakia Suman, of course, there are certain concerns about the UCC that has been brought in Jharkhand because it gives the state the right to step into people's bedrooms, etc. We understand that. But can we summarily suggest that it is a communal law?
So at the heart of the UCC is gender justice and equality. And that is why it is part of the Constitution. Ideally, the community should have themselves reformed their laws. That has happened in the case of the Hindu community, the Hindu Marriage Act, Hindu Succession Act. In the face of opposition also, these laws were codified, a range of laws for the Hindu community. Christian laws were also reformed from time to time, but unfortunately the Muslims were denied the opportunity of reformed and codified laws, which has been a huge anomaly. And I think that Uniform Civil Code is a very good option for the Muslim community, for the Muslim women also, to realize their rights in marriage and in family. The Uttarakhand draft, now which is passed, it has become law. It has certain very good provisions, some of which have been listed out by you in your opening remarks, pertaining to age of marriage, pertaining to disbarring of polygamy, bigamy, pertaining to mutual divorce, taking away unilateral divorce.
But Zakia Soman, I know that you have fought a long battle for this, but I want to ask you, because you just heard Badruddin Ajmal saying that, you see, this imposition is an unnatural one. And what is unnatural will not be tenable in the long run. Will not be tenable in the long run. Zakia Suman, what is unnatural about differentiating between men and women when it comes to inheritance or when it comes to marriage? Is this something that you have imposed on the community by demanding? And have you then therefore proceeded along an unnatural path?
No, there is nothing unnatural about this because God made men and women equal. It's the patriarchal mindsets, it's the misogynist mindsets which converted everything to the advantage of the male at the cost of the female. So this is, this correction was long pending.
Correction was long pending. Okay, let me bring in Mohammed Sohail. Ishkaran Bhandari also joins our panel. Mohammed Sohail, let me just ask you straight off the bat. Do you support the UCC when it strikes down polygamy, number one? When it guarantees equal rights now to men and women in the matters of inheritance, maintenance, maintainability, divorce?
सर देखिए, पहली चीज़ तो आप मुझे ये यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड से ज़्यादा एक हिंदू कोड दिख रहा है, हिंदुत्व का कोड, जो हमें जबरदस्ती हमारे
मैंने आपसे एक डायरेक्ट सवाल पूछा, पहले आप उसका जवाब देंगे प्लीज।
सर मैं भी जवाब दे रहा हूँ सर, मैं दूंगा ना सर।
पहले पॉलिटिसाइज कर रहे हैं,
तो हो गया ना, मुझे तो जवाब देने दीजिए आप।
मैं आपको फैक्ट पे पहले सवाल पूछ रहा हूँ सर, प्लीज answer on point.
आने दीजिए ना, वहां तक
I asked you a simple question. Do you support the ban on polygamy, sir?
मैं सर देखिए, ये चीज को नहीं होना चाहिए और नहीं हो रही है, ठीक है। मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, हमारा जो हो सो एक भारत जो हो सो डिफरेंट कल्चर रिलीजन से भरा हुआ है। हमारे पास देखिए, जब बाबा साहब अम्बेडकर ने जब कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में इसके बारे में लिखा, आप मुझे बोलिए, उनसे बड़े कोई समझदार आज तक की तारीख में इस मुल्क में है क्या? कोई बाबा साहब अम्बेडकर के दिमाग से ज़्यादा दिमाग किसी का आज है क्या? मुझे बताइए। जो सारे मज़हबों को, सारे कल्चर को, सारे मतलब हर चीज़ को साथ में लेके चलने के बाद जो हो सो ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन फ्रेम किया गया था। रही देखिए, आप एक ट्राइबल्स को अलग रखते हैं, हिंदू इनहेरिटेंस को जो सो अलग रखते हैं, आप क्या करना चाह रहे हैं? आप मुझे बताइए। अब रही उत्तराखंड में देखिए, हजारों करोड़ का खर्चा हो गया है। उनके पास वहां पे पूरी नहीं इतना सारा परेशानी में
No, I've got a lawyer here precisely to answer these fact-based questions. Is there a distinction between Hindus and Muslims at any level in the UCC that Uttarakhand has adopted, sir?
Rahul, firstly, I want to apologize for joining late, but there are crazy jams in Delhi today because, as usual, Delhiites have to deal with the protest and then police has to barricade the roads. So that's the life of a Delhiite nowadays. But anyways, coming to the subject. Firstly, let's be clear, because Dr. Balasaheb Ambedkar is being praised, and we all need to praise Dr. Ambedkar. He is the one who brought this into directive principles of state policy, that you will have a uniform civil code. So if you are respecting him, respect him fully. He said even at that time that the aim is to provide uniform laws in the civil field to everybody. You have uniform laws in the criminal field. Nobody says implement Sharia law and cut my hand off if I commit theft or something. You have uniform commercial laws in this country. The Contract Act, the Specific Relief Act, the property laws, you have uniform. The only place you want to have these special laws, these Sharia laws, and I just read an article by the Times in UK saying Modi is overturning Sharia laws. By definition, we are a secular country. How can a secular country allow Sharia laws for a segment or any religious law to govern the civil aspects of life? That is the very negation of the concept of secularism at the very basic level. So at the preamble says secular. How can a country with a preamble of secular in it, even though it's imposed in emergency, allow religious laws to govern one part of society? Secondly, the Supreme Court in Shah Bano, the problem of not having a uniform civil code is an old lady got maintenance by the Supreme Court saying that the laws applicable to her provide her with relief at that age if her husband dumps her, throws her out of the house, and then you get it overturned by the parliament. And then you get a special law passed against a woman from the Muslim community itself. That is why you needed a law banning triple talaq. That is why you need uniform maintenance laws. And all that will come in the form of a civil code, which will be applicable to all women of this nation. But those who want to deny women maintenance, those who want to deny women custody rights, those who want to deny women property rights, of course they will oppose it under the garb of certain religious laws which anyways have no application. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was clear. Mr. Nehru, just one point, Rahul. When Mr. Nehru, the first Prime Minister, introduced the Hindu Marriage Act and the Hindu Code Bill, as it was called collectively, he said the time is not yet right for the Muslim women to be brought under this. But we will later bring in. So even at that time it was recognized, but I think due to politics, vote banks, etc., he did not bring it in. But today we have a government which in the modern age has to provide relief to every woman, every child, every old parent who has to get maintenance. From a woman to an old parent, everybody has to be covered under the same uniform civil codes, and we can all agree to that, unless we want to deny
Mr.
the
Bhandari,
weaker sections their rights.
let me ask you a counter question, since you're the expert, and I want to bring in the BJP spokesperson, Mohammad Suhail, once again. Mr. Bhandari, let me just ask you this. In the context of the UCC in Uttarakhand, since that's become the first state in independent India to adopt it, Goa, of course, had it, but it had an inherited framework from the Portuguese. But let me just ask you this fundamentally. They say that by adopting this, Uttarakhand is becoming the test lab for a Hindutva Iran, the creation of a Hindutva Iran, because it is essentially discriminatory. Is this
Rahul, may I ask this? It's a ridiculous question. It's a wife-beating question, but I will still answer that. Is United States of America a Christian Iran? Is United Kingdom a Christian Iran? Is Australia a Christian Iran? Every one of these nations, the Muslim community lives there under a uniform civil code. Are all those nations Iran or Taliban? But when they go out, they are willing to live in this because the Indian state was soft and did vote bank politics. That is why we have this debate today. No Western country, no
Let
country
me bring
which
in
calls
Mr. Suhail and RP Singh.
Last line.
Yeah.
No country which calls itself a democracy allows a separate civil code for a large part of its population. Not one country they can cite.
Mohammad Suhail, when you go and live in the United States, and millions of Indian Muslims also do so, and of course in America, then you are happy to abide by a uniform civil code. Here in India, you want allowances, and when someone comes in and says no, UCC will be imposed, you say, oh, Ambedkar ki suniye. This is hypocrisy.
सर मेरा आपसे फिर से यही सवाल है कि क्यों हिंदू अनडिवाइडेड को एक्सक्लूड किया गया है, क्यों ट्राइबल्स को एक्सक्लूड किया गया है। मोदी हुकूमत ने क्लियरली बताया था सुप्रीम कोर्ट में, ये बिल पार्लियामेंट के जरिए प्रेसिडेंट के हिदायत के बाद हो सकती है। अगर हर स्टेट अपनी एक बिल बनाना शुरू कर दें तो
आपने कहा that you want to, no, you say that you believe what Mr. No, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why tribals were excluded. One second. I'll tell you why. There's a factual reason. No, one second, Mr. Suhail. Mr. Suhail, don't be retical. Let's be factual. I want to bring in Ishkaran Bhandari on this point. One second.
Allow me to keep my stand. See, if you
Rahul here.
Rahul, allow me to keep my stand. Just give me a 6.
No, 1 second. You see, you made this point 3 times. You are again dilating. You are not addressing the simple and straightforward question I asked you. You have now picked up on the tribal issue.
Rahul, you are not allowing me to address. You are keeping your. I have my stand. Allow me to
you know
keep
what?
my stand. Then
You speak for 10 minutes. Go ahead. Start. Speak for 10 minutes.
I'll just take 60 seconds. I don't need 10 minutes.
You have repeated yourself 4 times, but go ahead.
Same, clear. तो मैं सर जो हकीकत है, सच्चाई है, एक बार बोलो 100 बार बोलो वही रहेगी। अब रही बात, देखिए उत्तराखंड ऑलरेडी 17,000 हेक्टेयर जमीन पानी में डूबी है, लोग परेशान है, उनको वहां पे यूसीसी लेके आके लोगों के घर नहीं चलने वाले।
Here is a classic example of Mr. Suhail now starting to talk about unemployment, about floods in Uttarakhand. I don't understand what he wants to say. You don't have a point to make, Mr. Suhail. I'm going to have to shut you down. I'm sorry, you are now eating into time. I'm just asking you a very simple question, Mr. Suhail. Can you answer this question? Can you? Okay, just shut him down, please. This is not going anywhere. This is ridiculous. A man who has 0 points to make is trying to derail the debate, viewers. That cannot work, because there are other people waiting patiently for their turn. And it just shows how Mr. Asif Suhail has 0 points to make on this particular issue, is exposing himself. He's not actually distinguishing himself, he's exposing himself. Let me bring in RP Singh. Mr. Singh, there is a larger question of whether you are trying to turn Uttarakhand into some sort of a Hindutva Iran. Please answer that, number one. Number two, the exemptions that have been made for tribals. I want Mr. Ishkan Bhandari to join us back, because I want to draw him in on this, because there's a reason why tribals have been given this allowance, and it is because Dr. Ambedkar himself had mentioned something very pointedly, which I will drag out if Ishkaran is not available. Yes, RP Singh, could you please respond to those points?
Rahul, before I come to your specific point, let me read out Mr. Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru ji also on this. He said, I have no doubt in my mind that the real progress of country means progress not only the political plane, or not only on economic plane, but also on social plane.
Yeah.
And they have to integrate it, all these when their great nation goes forward. This is in context to UCC he has referred to. And you already quoted a lot of other congressmen and a lot of other people who were part of the discussions for framing the laws. But also let me quote here the courts which have been categorically stating the earlier Chief Justice Mr. Y.V. Chandrachud has said that, and in a remark he said, a common civil code will help the cause of national integration by removing disparate loyalties to law which have conflicting ideologies. The Apex Court called it is a matter of regret that Article 44, which refers to UCC, has remained a dead letter. So did Justice Kuldeep Singh. Later on said Article 44 has to be retrieved from the court storage where it has been lying since 1949. So did Pratibha Singh, the learned judge of the High Court, said in one of the judgment, he said in modern Indian society, which is gradually becoming homogeneous and traditional, barriers of religion, community and caste are slowly disappearing. I mean, this is all reference to UCC which has been said. But I have to say one point very clearly. All those who are opposing UCC are basically saying that they want to use women as a commodity. It's very harsh, but this is the truth. Because if women get equal right, there's a problem with them. If women get equal right for inheritance,
okay,
or they have a say in a marriage, or all women will have an equal right for the marriage or divorce or inheritance or succession. I mean, what's the problem in? And my dear friend from the Congress party referred to section 15 of the law. I have the copy of the law, and I will read both sections 15 and 16. He should read both the part, then he will understand. When you get married and you get it registered, anyone can go and check whether who has been registered, what's wrong in it. And then tomorrow, if I marry second time, for example, if I marry second time, or anyone marries second time, and then if he doesn't quote disclose there in the court that he has married second time, but he is registered as married the first time.
Right.
Obviously, someone should go and
so
check.
Very quickly, let me bring in.
Challenge that.
I understand that. I understand that. That is an important proviso. But Ishkan Bhandari, there are certain problems.
Mentioned in para 16 of the law.
One second, Mr. RP Singh. On the question of tribals, especially, let's not forget that tribals, especially in the Northeast, their rights are governed as per Article 371 of the Constitution. So there is an exception that has been made. So it's misinformation to suggest that this has been done as some sort of electoral favor. No, viewers. Article 371 exists. One will have to go and amend that, etc., etc. For that, consensus will have to be built, like we had with Article 370. It's a long, drawn-out process. Certain rights have been guaranteed, special rights, through that special law. Am I right? Ishkan Bhandari, yes. Number one. Number two, I just wanted to ask you about registering.
And it is not under the purview of the state.
Yes, okay, that's right. And also about registering marriages. Many people say that that's a problem.
Rahul, that's the basic. Marriages should be registered. We need to, because there is a debate going on about polygamous marriages. Are they happening? Are they not happening? What is the level they are happening? And does a woman, we see online so often now it's being cheated. Forget, this is not a religion thing. For a second, just focus how often people who are married hide their marriages, create an online identity. If you have a register where the person's name is there and whatever his details are there, and he is married, it will provide safety to a lot of women that they will not be duped by somebody who is already having an existing marriage, which is not permissible as per law to remarry. So that clarity, that data collection, every nation needs to have. That's a basic clarity. Only people wanting to have multiple marriages, hiding the marriage or having multiple marriages, would be the ones resisting that a marriage should be registered. Of course, it's a first draft. It's one state which has done it. It's not a draft, it's a law now. One state has done it. There are certain provisions with live-in which probably need to be rethought about. I think they should be rethought. There are some good parts of it. For example, a child born in a live-in should be legitimate. That is a good part of that live-in chapter. But there are, of course, certain parts which are overbearing and probably the state
But that
is
has nothing to
overreaching.
do, viewers, once again, with religion.
Yes.
So this entire fear mongering that is going on is motivated, viewers. We must look through it. There are concerns. Those concerns will be debated on merit. On merit, viewers. But let's move on. Let's move on in the program because there's been a significant development today, viewers. The Modi government has announced a white paper on the UPA's handling of the economy in contrast to its own record in office. The NDA particularly wants to compare its own record with the previous 10 years of the UPA between 2004 and 2014. The NDA has talked about how an economy down on fundamentals was brought out of distress while also producing record performance on infrastructure and beneficiary schemes. The NDA's white paper on UPA suggests that under the UPA, the country had dipped into the fragile 5. But under the NDA, it has peaked to become one of the top 5 economies. There was double-digit inflation, which has been brought down to little over 5%. Record foreign exchange reserves of 620 plus billion now, as opposed to earlier. The NDA says that the UPA era was defined by scams. 2G scams to 3 lakh crore revenue of telecom providers was siphoned off and given to various individuals on a dodgy basis. The resources devolved to states 3.8 times higher than earlier, countering what some opposition parties have been saying was a discriminatory attitude towards southern states in particular by the Modi government. The NDA said the pace of national highway construction is 2.3 times higher than 2015. The Congress has criticized the decision by the NDA to release a white paper on the UPA to contrast how the economy is doing now as a political gimmick. And in fact, they brought out their own black paper to counter this, highlighting price rise and obviously also on how the UPA did better on LPG, petrol, diesel, mustard oil price regulation. The price of atta and milk, they have pointed out how prices have gone up. Cylinder price, they say, is up 120%. Rest hover in the 30 to 70% area. The Prime Minister, meanwhile, took a jibe at the Congress, saying that their black paper is actually a kala tika or good omen on the economy under the NDA. That's how he's taking it. If we have that soundbite, let's quickly play it out.
आज देश पिछले 10 साल में समृद्धि के नए नए शिखर सर कर रहा है। एक भव्य दिव्य वातावरण बना है, उसको नजर न लग जाए, इसलिए काला टीका करने का आज प्रयास हुआ है। मैं उसके लिए भी खड़गे जी का बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूं, ताकि इस हमारी प्रगति की यात्रा को कोई नजर न लग जाए। ये नजर न लग जाए, इसलिए आपने आज जो काला टीका किया है, मैं तो सोच रहा था सब काले कपड़ों में आएंगे, लेकिन शायद काला जादू खिंचते 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 ब्लैक पेपर तक चला गया है। लेकिन फिर भी मैं उसका भी स्वागत करता हूं, क्योंकि जब भी अच्छी बात होती है, काला टीका नजर न लग जाए, इसलिए बहुत जरूरी होता है। और उस पवित्र काम को, और आज जिस उम्र के हैं उस व्यक्ति जब ये काम करता है तो जरा अच्छा रहता है, तो मैं इसके लिए भी आपका आभार व्यक्त करता हूं।
Well, viewers, the Prime Minister blowing off the Congress's black paper, as it called it, in response to the NDA's white paper as insignificant. But there are questions that need to be posed to the Bharatiya Janata Party, and who better than the Vice President of the party to answer them? Let's go straight across to Mr. Bijayant Panda. Thank you, Mr. Panda, for speaking to me. Of course, Mr. Panda is the Vice President of the BJP, and I'm going to begin by asking you some straight and pointed questions, as I always do, Mr. Panda. So I'm going to ask you perhaps the most fundamental one. Does the white paper that has been put out by the NDA serve any purpose, any practical purpose, other than being a vector for the government's version of its own economic performance before the 2024 general elections?
First of all, it is not the government's version, it is a matter of historical record. And I think it is important for Indians to understand this. Now, Rahul, you and I were adults back in the UPA era, and we have heard and read and gone into some of the details of the many scams which let India down very badly. But let's understand that there are tens of millions of new voters who are between the ages of, say, 18 and 25 or a little bit older than that, who may have been too young to understand what was going on, and they may think that this new India, which is the 5th largest economy in the world, which is the fastest growing big economy in the world, which is an India that is helping other countries rather than always being helped by other countries, they may think this is all normal. And yes, of course it should be normal, but it wasn't. And it wasn't because the government of the day let India down very, very badly. Remember, it was in the UPA era that international agencies called India one of the fragile 5 economies in the world. It was in the UPA era that there were scams galore. Now, how many youngsters will today remember the medical scam? The Medical Council of India was set up to extort people who wanted to get into that sector. Now today you are seeing new medical colleges being set up all across the country in their dozens and their hundreds, because India traditionally has had a huge shortage of doctors. Now this misery was being exploited by the government of that day to extort money for corruption. I can tell you more about the coal scam, I can tell you more about the mining scam. We can go on, but I think these tens of millions of younger Indians deserve to understand the context in which this new India is being hailed around the world.
Well, you've talked about scams, so let me just proceed down that route. The coal block scam, the 2G scam, INX media scams highlighted in the report, we all know have ended up not going very far. There have been no convictions, are largely pending trial across the country. So is the linkage to the Congress and UPA politicians a little premature, perhaps even a political exercise, Mr. Panda?
I think yes. Now let's also keep in mind that the speed of the judicial system is not something that our government can fix overnight. It primarily depends on decisions to be taken by the honorable judiciary itself. Now remember, the NJAC, which was set up in India with unanimous support from all parties, was struck down by the judiciary, which would have speeded up the process and made it more transparent to appoint judges. Now that hasn't happened. That's not something that a government alone can fix. The reality is, if you look at the speed of resolution of judicial processes, let's take for example the bad loans and the huge NPAs of the banks. Now during the UPA era, during that decade, it's no secret that bank chairmen were being appointed for unethical considerations. It's no secret that massive amounts of loans were extended to people who then siphoned off those funds, and many of them ran away from the country. But the reality is, during the Modi government, very strong action has been taken. Now this is something that can and has happened under the government. It doesn't require the judicial process as much, because the IBC, in the old days, the resolutions of such kind of frauds used to take 25, 50 years. Today, you are seeing resolutions of bankruptcies, resolutions of siphoning off of money under the Money Laundering Act, under the Serious Frauds Investigations Authority, speeded up dramatically, and you are seeing many, many convictions. So, it's surely going to lead to many more convictions, because everybody knows, I think you must have in your days as an anchor even then shown the scenes of how the 2G scam happened, how physical bouncers were used to ensure that only those who were approved of were allowed to bid in time. That kind of corruption has ended, and surely the convictions will follow.
Okay. Let me just ask you pointedly. The opposition questions the timing of the white paper, branding it a political pamphlet. How do you respond to that charge?
The opposition has a black heart, so they will obviously issue black papers. The reality is, this opposition, particularly led by the Congress, is a miserable sham of an opposition. Okay. And they always question the timing because they can't question the merit. Now, let them come out and say that the convictions which have taken place, let them come out and say that the Chara Ghotala did not happen in Bihar. Let them come out and say that Arvind Kejriwal and his people have not scammed Delhi through the excise scam of huge amounts of money. They won't say that because on the merits they can't. So they will only come out with other angularities like timing and all of that. Let's make it very clear. Prime Minister Modi has explicitly said that the country deserves a good opposition. The country deserves an opposition that can place facts before Parliament and before the people of the country, and perhaps try to give an alternate vision. But this opposition has only tried to drag down the India story. They have questioned each and every policy decision which has led to the success of India in the eyes of the world and in the eyes of 1.4 billion Indians. That's all they are good at, just to divert and to try and pull down the India story.
Okay. Well, Mr. Panna, thank you for speaking to us, giving your perspective. Let's open this up further, viewers. Let's bring in Professor Santosh Mehrotra, senior economist and a critic really of the Modi government's economic record, and also Vishwas Pathak, spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party. Let me first begin with you, Mr. Mehrotra. Look, you can dice it whichever way you want to, but the data does speak for itself. Whether it is on capex, agriculture expenditure, FDI inflow, CPI, inflation, net direct tax collections, the pace of building airports, highways, etc. The NDA has done a far better job. The UPA, if you go by the Eco Survey of 2012-2013, noted, and I quote it, India's recent slowdown, quote unquote slowdown, is partly government activities including in procurement, allocation of natural resources and regulatory approvals, which was then called in generic colloquial parlance an era of paralysis. We descended into the zone of the fragile five. How can we ignore all of this, Mr. Mehrotra?
The data speaks for itself. So, Mr. Shivshankar, I hope you will give me the time. Firstly, much is made about the gross FDI flows. Gross FDI flows are not the metric. The metric always in any economy is FDI as a proportion of GDP. And FDI as a proportion of GDP has never exceeded 2% under this government. It was consistently slightly over 2% of GDP under the UPA. Point one about the FDI. And secondly, most of the FDI that was earlier coming in was in manufacturing. It's so far under this government basically been for two purposes. The share of manufacturing has dropped dramatically. It has mostly been in services, and it has been to buy Indian companies. Let me move on to other statistics. On tax collection, obviously the gross tax collection with the size of the economy are going to grow. So when you give your banners are running 16 lakh crores versus 6 lakh crores, it means nothing. The point is total tax revenue to GDP ratio has been systematically similar under the UPA and in the present regime. Let's look at the foreign exchange number. Foreign exchange as a percentage of GDP can hardly be differentiated between the two. The more important point is that why are we holding a poor economy cannot necessarily afford a $600+ billion foreign exchange reserve. It's actually a waste of resources. The more important point is, let me just clarify this, because some people may think that this is not so important. The more important point really is that as more and more capital flows in, what happens is that your exchange rate appreciates in real terms. And that's exactly what has been happening. And because of that, exports have not been growing. Merchandise real exports have actually fallen in absolute dollar values for 5 years after this government
You
came
made
to power.
5 points. Let me get Mr. Pathak in. Mr. Pathak, could you please respond to Mr. Mehrotra?
With due respect, Mr. Mehrotra is self-contradicting himself. On one hand, he's saying there is no growth with FDI in terms of GDP percentage. On other hand, he says when economy grows, revenue also grows, tax collection also grows. So on one hand, he's accepting that economy is growing, therefore tax collection is growing. It is very simple. Since 2014, when Mr. Modi government took over the charge, that time our economic size was $2 trillion US. Now what is our size? It is almost 4 trillion. We were 11th, now we are 5th. And after this, we are poised to become a third economy by achieving 5 trillion economy. How it is happening all? See, 2014 onwards, this government has not enhanced any direct tax rates. As far as indirect tax rates are concerned, earlier pre-GST regime, average tax rates were like 23-24%. Today it is less than 18%. So without increasing tax, how this economy is growing? Our budget size in 2014 was something like 50 lakhs crore. Today it is in excess of 50 lakhs crore. How it is possible? Because Mr. Modi has marketed our economy, our Indian, all across the world. Investors friendly atmosphere was created. Laws were issued, and cases like NP and all that thing were put on track. Insolvency and bankruptcy also played its role. I think after 91-92, post-liberalization and globalization, when Mr. Vajpayee was there, our economic trajectory was something like 8, 9, 10% growth of GDP in 2004. Thereafter, this government, UPA government, was tomtoming only on the growth which they got in inheritance from Mr. Vajpayee. Thereafter, they lost everything. Inflation rate was in double digit. Fiscal deficit was in very bad shape. Whereas when Mr. Modi came, the average economic GDP rate was something like 2%. That time our economy grew by 7%. Today average growth is 4% worldwide. Our economy is growing by 7%.
Well, viewers,
so this is all because of the decisive leadership.
Okay. Well, there is some amount of, at least in international circles, consensus on the fact that India has emerged relatively unscathed from the pandemic. Yes, certain sectors of the economy have taken a hit and continue to be struggling, which is certainly the rural sectors. And there are figures that suggest that. But viewers, net, we seem to be growing, and the government expects to be growing the GDP at about 7.1% as we go forward. Now, viewers, we can keep dissecting the numbers and we will be here the whole night. But I'll leave it at that, because fundamentally, this white paper, black paper debate is going to percolate down into your drawing rooms and will perhaps have an influence when you go and press that button in the next 60, 70 days. I'll take a short break. When I come back, here's a quick update on a very big story.
Thus, a lot of pressure on what exactly comes out of this pageant. We are told it will happen in March in Mumbai. So we sat down with Sini and I asked her a couple of questions. The one thing I really wanted to understand from her was that since India is known for Atithi Devo Bhava, she will also be hosting the 120 other contestants. How would she describe India in one word? That and much more in this conversation. All right, it's time to amp up the glam quotient on the Breakfast Club, and our next guest will truly give you an insight of that, will be that person to take you through all things beauty, all things brains and all things the pride of India. Who am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about the Miss World pageant, which India is now going to be hosting in March of this year after a 27-year hiatus. That means the last time India actually hosted this pageant was 27 years ago, and now finally is the time. And of course, all eyes are on our India representative. On that note, let me welcome on TBC Sini Shetty. Hello and welcome. How are you doing this morning?
Hi everyone. Hi Sonal. I'm doing great. I'm super excited. Thank you so much for having me here.
Let me start by saying this for our viewers who don't know Sini. Let me just introduce you a little bit. She's 21-year-old. She obviously won the Miss World, the Miss India World title, and thus will be representing India in that pageant. She is a finance graduate from what I know and has temptations to pursue that further. She is also a Bharatnatyam dancer. So she wears lots of hats. So, Sini, for those of us watching right now, the first question that really comes to mind and I really want to understand is, what were you thinking when you applied for this pageant? What's gotten you to this stage? What's the inspiration?
Well, you know, just looking back at my journey, when I look at my days, I won in Miss India in the year 2022. And the same year, I've lived two different lives. A girl who was working in a corporate field, pursuing accountancy, dancing her way, dancing through her life, and suddenly when Miss India happened, her life changed. You know, I was happy in my life. I felt that I have achieved everything that I have had in my bucket list, that I've had in the year 2022.
That's quite nice.
But when I entered Miss India, when I understood a lot more about pageantry, pageantry was love at first sight. I personally felt that there was more vision to my life, there was more purpose to my life, a lot more that I can do with my caliber, a lot more that I can do with my abilities.
Alright, Sini, so clearly you are very accomplished, you've studied the right places, you've worked as well, but take me 1 second back to the moment you decided or you went to your parents and said, listen, hang on, this finance degree and everything else can wait, I need to go and enroll myself in the Miss India pageant. What was the conversation like at home?
Well, there was definitely worry. I still remember that there was definitely panic around my parents, where they were wondering and they were questioning. They were not wrong when they questioned me that why sudden switch, why do you feel that? They were just finding logic. I think I still remember one of my favorite memories. We were just sitting across and we had this simple conversation where I told them that this is the direction that I want to pursue. And I feel that this gives logic to my life, this gives vision to my life. And I definitely feel very positive about it. As much as I'm happy here and I promised that I would complete this, I am not someone who quits. I would pursue it. But this at the moment feels very strong. This goes with my vision, this aligns with my purpose. And I would really want to do it.
And you were working at that point, no? You were already in a job.
Exactly. I was working in a marketing firm. It was a youth marketing organization which catered to around 40,000 students. Everything was well, but I just felt that there was more to me. I could have done a lot more. it
So
is
you
just
found
fulfilling.
purpose. You found purpose, and kudos to your
I
parents.
found purpose in life.
Yeah, kudos to your parents for listening into purpose. This is what we always say. Every child is different. Every child has a different
Yes.
passion. So you come from Karnataka, right? You also come from
Correct.
a community. We have had former Miss World come from. Aishwarya Rai Bachchan comes from that. This
Yes.
is happening when India is hosting. So clearly, no pressure as we go into the contest this year.
Absolutely no pressure. I have a roller coaster of emotions. I am feeling excited. I'm also feeling content because all of them are coming here. I have so much to do. I have so much to show them. So there are a lot of feelings, but not nervousness at all.
So one of the key takeaways I want people to take from this interview is also to know how you guys handle the pressure on such a huge platform. Take us through what kind of training are you given to be yourself, to compose yourself, to come out this confident person, and like you said, no pressure of carrying only 1 billion expectations on your shoulders.
Well, you know, the preparations have been on full swing. I have been preparing for Miss World for the last 2 years. There is a lot.
Oh yes,
that
because
goes
of the
into.
pageant, because of
There
the
is-
pandemic, the contest couldn't take place.
Yes, so there has been a lot of.
A quick breaking story update that we're getting before we go to the right stand. Haldwani city in Uttarakhand is tense. The local administration there reportedly bulldozed what they claim was an illegal mazar or a mosque. In retaliation, the locals there have gone on a rampage. They've torched several vehicles. We're given to understand that several police personnel have been injured in the process. Even journalists have been targeted. What you're seeing was the retaliatory violence by the locals there. It started when the local administration there reportedly bulldozed what they claim was an illegal mazar, an illegal mosque that was built on government land. That's the contention of the administration. The locals there got enraged by this action, and then they responded aggressively. They responded violently by torching police vehicles as well as private vehicles in which several police personnel as well as other individuals, including journalists, have suffered injuries. So the situation there seems to be tense in Haldwani in Uttarakhand. This is the latest that we're getting. We will bring you more information as and when we get it. Right now, the latest update from Haldwani is that the city is tense after a quote-unquote illegal mazar was bulldozed there by the local administration for what they claim was built on government land. In response, the locals there have gone on a rampage, torching vehicles and destroying and damaging public and private property. Now, for the right stand.
Co-presented by New Kia Sonet, the Wild Reborn.